Between diaper changes and feedings and getting a 3-month-old to sleep, I don't have the time to do my makeup and hair and get dressed and look all pretty for the camera, but I'm not going to let that stop me from sharing my thoughts on the Alabama abortion bill that has just passed. Before I get too deep into anything, I want to clarify what the bill actually states. And if you haven't read the bill, I would recommend Googling Alabama abortion bill and actually finding it on the Alabama website and take a look at it, because there is nothing in it that criminalizes the woman. It actually states that a woman who an abortion is performed on or attempted to be performed on is not criminally or civilly liable for anything. So it's all about punishing the abortionist for their actions than the woman herself. Additionally, this bill just protects human life after 6 weeks. Once the heartbeat is able to be established, there are no exceptions except for if the woman's health is in danger, so endangerment to the woman, if there is a lethal anomaly with the fetus that would cause it to die upon being born, or if the baby has already died. Yes, the bill protects the human life that has been conceived through rape or incest after the 6-week mark. So here's the deal. This is not a war on women, okay? I'm reading this everywhere and it's driving me crazy because the war is actually on human life. It is on the babies. It's on the clump of cells that somehow miraculously develops itself into a baby. I remember when I was about 8 weeks pregnant and I saw my first live birth video and all of these things, and I remember saying to my husband, I can't imagine if I didn't want a baby right now, like going through with this, because the idea of labor is terrifying. The idea of having to raise a human, if I wasn't wanting it, would be terrifying. And I remember when I was about to go into labor, I was ready to have my body back. But that's the whole thing, is that I was sharing my body with this little person. The whole argument of I wouldn't have an abortion, but somebody else could, falls apart when you start looking at moral relativism. When you start looking at the fact of saying there is nothing that is an absolute truth, everything else falls apart. Because the moment you say nothing has absolute truth is when suddenly you say even that statement can't be true. Back in the 70s, when the sexual revolution took place, the Pope even stated that birth control was going to be the segue to abortion. I'm not saying that birth control needs to be abolished, but I am saying that sex needs to be treated like it makes babies, because it does. That's the purpose of sex, okay? Like, yes, it is pleasurable, but that's the added aspect, right? Sex is not pleasurable first and foremost. First and foremost, it exists to keep our species alive. The Holocaust killed 6 million Jews. Since Roe v. Wade was passed, over 50 million human beings have been killed. American citizens. Trying to state that it's just a clump of cells, though, is crazy. An egg in and of itself is just a clump of cells, sure. But then a sperm comes and fertilizes it, and then it becomes a living thing, which is crazy to think about. My husband and I were just talking about this a couple days ago, about the fact that there is within me all of these eggs that are just stagnant, but somehow my body involuntarily releases one every month and it could potentially get fertilized. And once it does get fertilized, it's no longer an inanimate being, right? It's no longer not alive. It becomes alive when it is impregnated with a sperm, and it turns into a baby. The embryo turns into a fetus, which turns into a baby. Call it whatever you want, but every step along that development, my daughter was a human being. At no point was she going to be a squirrel. At no point was she going to become a tree. She was always a human. During my labor, I had terrible back labor, and the thought of getting pregnant again right now terrifies me because labor was so bad. I got an epidural and everything, but it did not touch the pain. So guess what? My husband and I aren't having a ton of sex right now. Go figure. Because guess what? Sex makes babies. I do understand that everyone is up in arms about the fact that a 12-year-old could get raped by her dad and then be forced to carry the baby to term, But that is if the heartbeat is then detectable, so after 6 weeks. And also, when you look at the research behind aborting a baby that is conceived from rape, the trauma that comes underway from that is much greater than if you just carry the baby to term and then either keep the baby or give the baby up for adoption. But once you see the sweet little face of your baby, I bet you won't be able to keep them away. You just learn to love them so much. Having my daughter really did edify and just strengthen that belief that I had about being pro-life, though, because I felt her growing. I felt those first kicks. I felt the hiccups. I felt all of those things. I heard the heartbeat at 8 weeks. I saw her at, 7 weeks was my first ultrasound, and saw the little deal. And then, at 8 weeks, I had to have another one. You could see the little arm buds forming and the feet forming, and this clump of cells was growing. It was multiplying, which is what happens in life when you start to see life. If you see, anything with the little microscope on the little deal. And everyone deserves that chance at life, especially if the heartbeat is there. That's 2 separate heartbeats. Okay, there's a separate set of DNA in the body. We are sharing our body with somebody else. Okay, so if you say my body, my choice, sure, yeah, you have to share your body, but when you're having an abortion, you are killing somebody else. And I understand how hard that can be if an abortion has been had in the past. Okay, if somebody made the decision because they didn't know that it was actually killing, a human, because they've been told by the media and by the doctor and whoever else that, oh no, it's just a clump of cells, they don't feel anything, it's not a big deal, and then they learn the truth. Then you see, wait a second, this is what a baby looks like after a dismemberment abortion, after a dilation and curettage, after a D&C. This is what happens. It's real what goes on. And the outrage that is surrounding the Alabama abortion bill right now has more to do with media commentary and the mob mentality of these people are terrible, there are no exceptions in this bill, the woman is going to get the death penalty if she has an abortion, she's going to go to jail for a really long time, all of these different things when none of them are true. Okay, the bill explicitly states the woman will not be criminally or civilly held liable. Okay, it's about the one who performed the abortion, who attempted the abortion. My personal opinion on rapists, though, is that they should be castrated, hands down. And so maybe abortionists should just have their hands cut off. At the very least, they should have their medical licenses revoked. Because even right now, you could make the claim that if my daughter at 3 months old was left alone, she would die. She would not be able to go get food. She would lay there crying. And so by using the argument of the zygote would die if you left it alone on a petri dish, right? Well, so would she. She would die. So by saying that, you're actually justifying infanticide. So I would just recommend actually reading the bill if you haven't already. I understand this whole concept of wanting to protect women's rights, but I just want to go back to the constitutional right to life, okay? We all have a right to life. That is why murder is considered the most heinous crime to commit, because you're taking away the life that we are most entitled to. That is the most natural, inherent, given right, is the ability to live. And then you have a baby who's going to grow into a toddler, who's going to grow into an adult. And just like you wouldn't call her an adult right now, you wouldn't call a zygote a baby, but that doesn't make it any less human. So those are my Friday feelings. Like I said, I didn't want to keep not being able to get dressed or do my hair from making a video because this is such an important topic. And I have been blasted on Twitter for saying that rape is not the same as murder, with everyone saying rape is worse than murder, which rape is a terrible crime, which is why I think rapists should be castrated and not have the ability to do it again. And yes, I have been raped, for all of those who have asked on Twitter. And I understand, I was doing pageants with the platform Abstinence, reuniting sex, love, and marriage when mine happened. And obviously that put a kibosh on a lot of my goals at that time. So I understand how it can change the course of life. Trust me. But 2 wrongs do not make a right. And adding trauma to trauma is like adding insult to injury. It doesn't help any of the healing, okay? And while I can understand the desire, for wanting to protect a woman to be able to make that choice in the case of rape, it's still a human being. And it's after the 6-week point, right? It's after the heartbeat is detectable. So, and if someone is raped, they need to go to the police as soon as possible. I've talked about that before. If anything, it just shows, if you're raped, go to the police ASAP, because they can do DNA testing. They can test for the man's DNA down there and like make sure that you're getting everything quantified and qualified immediately. I've got to get this girl fed into sleep. God bless you guys. Keep on sharing truth. Check out the bill. Read it for yourself. Don't listen to the media narrative, because there is a lot of false information going around right now and a lot of outrage about stuff that's just simply not true. And until next time, we'll see you later, alligators. Gonna eat the camera? Ow!